Hello everyone, this video is going to provide you with some information on how to develop the analysis paragraph for Essay 1, as well as some information about the conclusion paragraph for Essay 1. So here are some questions, and you will have this document to review at your leisure as well. But when you're developing the analysis, one of the things that you'll want to focus on is, of course, the perspectives that you included in your body paragraphs. And the reason for the analysis is for you as the writer to draw conclusions about those particular perspectives. So those conclusions can be anything. It just depends on the kind of question that you ask yourself about those particular perspectives. Remember that there's no right or wrong answer in this case, but we need to see a direct connection between the perspectives themselves and the commentary that you have. So in a way, it's creating the concept of the they say, I say. So the they say in this instance is going to be the perspectives presented in the text, or the perspectives that you chose for your essay. And then the I say is going to be a response to those. And we can look at some of those questions here. So the first one is maybe perhaps looking at key concepts that were presented in the text. And one of the ways to do that is to look for keywords. And so let's go ahead and look at a sample paragraph here. And in this case, we have a paragraph that presents two perspectives. So in this first paragraph, we're going to look at this one here first, okay? And we know that through the signal phrase that is here, one mother of a Nevada teen driver recommended that. And this is where the paraphrase begins, okay? And based off that, we want to look to see what sort of themes or key concepts. And so this person says the license should be changed from 16 to 18 because a person who is 16 is just a child. So we have the concept of just a child, or the perception, right, that the driver who is 16 is just a child, and that they cannot make proper decisions and choices about their lives and or driving on their own. So if we had to label this, again, what is the perception? Well, ultimately the perception is the notion of maturity, right? That they are not mature enough to make decisions. So decision making is lacking. And another way that we can look at this is to say that maybe, there's not really any evidence for all of this, right? This is just a parent's perspective, which means that it is probably emotionally based. Okay, so we have some words that we are starting with. Now, the next person right over here is another one. A father of a teen driver maintained that the policies were too lenient as well. Emphasized car accidents that are caused by teenagers only occur because the regulations for new drivers are too lenient and allow for people who are too young and immature to start handling vehicles. So again, we see the notion of too young and immature, and that it means that it's too lenient, and then car accidents, right? So again, we don't necessarily have like really strong evidence. We're again dealing with this notion of maturity here. So this might be a key concept that you want to focus on. Now, if we look at the other perspectives, for example, here, we now are looking at the perspectives from teenage drivers. And so let's go ahead and look at some of their quotes. So here we have one teenage driver suggested that required driving time of 50 hours in order to get a driver's license takes way too long because some of the other requirements needed for obtaining a driver's license. So they're actually looking at facts here, right? So this is not really emotionally driven. The teen says, doesn't really speak to the fact that it's too lenient or anything like that, but suggesting that the current laws takes too long and that there's, too many requirements. Okay. So logic, we can say maybe focusing on the requirements of things. Okay. So the next one is another teen driver. So we have another teen shares a similar perspective, so that in which he stressed that 6-month period after acquiring a driver's license, in which one can only drive with immediate family members, should be taken away. So again, stressing that they're still too strict of policies. So they're focusing on the policies here. And not really emotionally based, right? So on one end, if we wanted to look at this and identify key concepts, we have, of course, parents' perspective, and then we have teens' perspectives, right? And we know one is emotionally based. We know one is that, they're talking about maturity level. And the teenagers don't really speak to maturity. They don't include the perceptions, but more logically based. Okay, and then we also have that they're more fact-based and focus on requirements, okay? So you can actually speak to any of these things. And again, we can ask ourselves why this is emotionally, the fact that they're parents and they have concerns, the fact that one of the parents talked about a car crash, so maybe the impacts of this is their concern, where the teenagers are not really looking at that because they may not necessarily be parents themselves of drivers, obviously. Okay. So you have a couple of themes that are running around here. And as far as, answering the question, what key concepts are important, well, you decide based off the ones that we listed. Okay. The other thing that you can do is, of course, compare. And we have that comparison already here. So we have emotionally based, logically based. So if you want to focus on that aspect, or the fact that teenagers look at factual evidence and the parents are not really, their perspectives are not really evidence based, but they could be experience based, right? Based off of, their perception. So that's something that they can look at, or you can compare to. So your analysis could speak to the fact that teenagers are not parents, so they don't share the same concerns, or, yes, they're looking at facts, but they don't realize that there are other elements. Another way you can look at it is, again, look for patterns or themes that were present in relation to the much larger conversation. You can consider the subject you're exploring in relation to modern day. So that means you can examine it from, let's say, a cultural, social perspective. Maybe you can speak to the fact that, the Nevada laws, maybe there's a new bill or something like that, and you want to address that and make connections. Okay. So that's another way you can do it if you wish. And then if you want to, you can also talk about what influences the perspectives presented, right? So with parents, of course, we know that the influence is the fact that they're simply parents. They might have experience, concerns that come with parenting, whereas teenagers don't necessarily have that experience. And so maybe empathizing perhaps, or understanding why the perspectives are the way that they are, okay? The other thing that we want to look at, or at least anyway address, is the so what factor. Why does this all matter? So when you pick the information here, you want to be able to tie it to this concept of why does this information matter? So what do you want to tell your readers after you've drawn those conclusions? You want to tell them, hey, if you're a teenager, maybe it's important to kind of be lenient on parents, understand, right, where they might be coming from. Or for parents, perhaps, maybe they are underestimating their children based off of the fact that they understand, and respect the requirements of being a licensed driver. Now, the other thing you can do is, what did you discover? Maybe there was something startling in the perspectives. What does your subject say about society, or the expectations? Maybe we could talk about expectations. We could talk about norms, what's considered normal or normative. And then maybe you find through the perspectives that it actually is opposite of that. And in this example, the perspectives of the young drivers, demonstrate that it has nothing to do with maturity, but everything to do with, the laws, for example. Maybe you see something different through to prejudice or bias yourself, or perhaps maybe even through the perspectives given. And has observing the subject more closely led to any significant changes in your viewpoint? So this can be more personal conclusions if you want to, or if you have some of your own commentary about the perspectives, you can certainly include that as well. Okay, so this is going to be the analysis. The conclusion paragraph will be a little bit different, so be sure to watch the conclusion video. And remember that for the conclusion video, it should completely tie into, at least this information should lead into the conclusion paragraph.